I think he has had to think of an answer for this because he knew he was inevitably going to. And I think there's a moment where it's going to look like he is, oh no. But I think he was trying to recall, how did I think about getting the fuck out of this question without saying anything? And I thought he handled it very well. But this did not look great, I don't think, for Gerrit Cole, for baseball, or for anybody. I think this was last night.
And have you ever used Spider Tack while pitching?
Great question.
I don't.
What? Are you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if. I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest.
Okay, here we go. Be honest with him.
I mean, there are customs and practices that
Here we go.
have been passed down from older players to younger players, from the last generation of players
Like wiping
to
your
this
shoes.
generation of players, and
Wiping your shoes.
um,
Fucking
Is that common?
you know, I think.
You know he
I think
can
there
lie.
are
It doesn't
some
matter.
things that are certainly out of bounds in that regard, and
Like he's not under oath here.
I stood pretty
For real.
firm in
True.
terms of that, in terms of the communication between our peers and whatnot. You know, and I, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's, you know, this is important to a lot of people that love the game, and this is including the players in this room, including fans, including, you know, teams. And so if MLB wants to, you know, legislate some more stuff, that's a conversation that we can have, because
everybody's doing
ultimately
it.
we should all be pulling in the same direction on it.
Bingo, we're all pulling the same direction in on this, he says at the end of it, but there was a couple pauses in the middle. It was like, oh, there's a guilty guy. Oh, there's, and then his answer was, I don't want to bury anybody in particular. I don't want to put myself into a position, compromising position here, but I would like to speak on it, the generational and this is how this goes. So I don't think it is like putting your feet on the thing, because that's done in public and everybody knows that that is happening. I think this is something that is happening, but nobody really knows about until now. And if you're baseball, I guess you regulate it. I guess you just make it a rule. Hey, you're only allowed to have this much shit on your hat or something like that. Is that what they'll have to do? Is that how they'll meet in the middle here?
I mean, I guess that's how you could do it. Or, like, I mean, bring back the fucking juice baseballs. There you go. You give a little bit of incentive to the hitters, and guys can still do this and let it be.
Juice, you're saying?
Let the boys juice. Hit the ball out of the park. Give us what we want.
These unwritten rules in baseball seem to always exist, and then whenever they get abused, it leads to restriction. We saw it with the steroid era. We've seen it with the sign stealing, where you reported that the Astros didn't use an exoskeleton, but that was the story. But everybody said they stole signals. They just took it too far. Now with the pitching, it sounds like, and I might be wrong here, everybody in the history of baseball, basically, once this became a thing, has been doing this, and it's been taken too far now, and that's why they have to regulate it? Or what's going on with the whole sticky thing?
I'm going to go back, just because I want to tell this full story here. We're going to go back to, like, the 1920s. Guys have been putting garbage on baseballs for more than 100 years now. And it started off with spit and with whatever else they could. And the spitball was outlawed in 1920, and it was last thrown legally by a guy who got grandfathered in 1934. So baseball has a long and sordid history with foreign substances like this. Flash forward to about 2010. When a company called TrackMan, which is a Danish company that uses a radar to, it was originally made for golf. TrackMan comes in and it starts tracking the spin on baseballs that are being thrown. And all of a sudden, guys are recognizing, if I throw something with more spin, Pat, it's going to be more effective, especially fastballs, sliders, curveballs. And so guys start saying to themselves, okay, how do I throw with more spin? They try and do it naturally. They can't do it. All of a sudden, they start mixing on their, on their bicep. They put a little bit of sunscreen and mix it with rosin. And they got a little tackiness, and they start throwing it with more spin. And then they're like, okay, if I can do that with sunscreen and rosin, what if I go and, melt something inside of a Coke can, like I'm a junkie, and use that stuff? And they start doing that. And so you got like home brew going on now. Like, it's getting really real here. And then
That's
they
awesome.
I mean, they go past the home brew stuff and they're like, okay, what is the stickiest substance I can find? And they find something called Spider Tack. And Spider Tack was made by one of those world's strongest man power lifters out of rosin and polymers and all sorts of things, so that when you pick up those 300-pound Atlas stones, your hands do not lose grip on them.
Hey, you got to put it up on the thing.
Yep.
Man, it's not
On the
easy.
pillow.
On the thing. Yeah, and I saw a guy using that thing, and I think he was a power lifter. He was holding just a brick up with his hand wide open with that spider stuff on it.
Like, how rampant is the use? And players obviously had to be aware of this. Like, hitters know that there's probably some pitchers on their team using it, so it's all around the league. Like, is this something that it's been known forever, and are pitchers pretty open, at least like in the clubhouse, about it?
So here's the interesting part of it. That's a great question, AJ. Here's the interesting part about it. Hitters up until this year actually had been okay with the idea that pitchers were using this, because pitchers had been saying for years, hey guys, we throw harder than we ever have before. This stuff gives us control. It allows us to keep you safe when you're out there. And hitters were like, all right. Then hitters started hitting 237 across the sport and realized that we suck when guys are throwing 2,500 RPM fastballs and 3,000 RPM sliders. And it's almost, there are parallels here with the steroid era. And I'm not trying to say that using Spider Tack is equivalent to shooting Deca into your butt. Like, I don't think that's the same.
What do you know
thing
about Deca, Jet? Is that what that hair's sitting all about? Is that what you
you know it, buddy. What I am saying is steroids started becoming a big deal in baseball when pitchers realized that they were at a disadvantage against these hitters who had turned into monsters. Spin rate and sticky stuff is becoming an issue in baseball when hitters realize that they have nothing to combat what they're going against on the mound right now. Yeah. And so that's why we're hearing about it right now. Up until this point, the only way to stop this was to have managers say to umpires, hey, whoever's out there doing this is using a foreign substance. The problem is managers were never going to say that, guys, because their guys were doing the exact same thing. Yeah, and they didn't want to narc on their guys by trying to talk about others.
And that seemed to be the case whenever, I think this first maybe a month ago, maybe, I don't know how many, whenever it first got into my timeline, which means it had to have been a pretty big thing, you saw the pitcher actually look at the other person, and it was almost like, oh, you want to start this? Like, is that what we're... It was almost like the pitchers were very upset that this was now becoming something, because it's like, we all know that this is how we do it. How come baseball is filled with so many of these things? Is it because the sport is so terrible? Like, why is it that there's all these things that have to happen and then a big explosion? How come they can't just, shake hands and treat this like a gentleman's sport?
Please.
Hey, if you want to eat Deca, go ahead and do it. We're going to do it too, though. If you want to put deadlifting sticky stuff on your fingers, cool. But then when you said is the batters were like, there's nothing we could put on our bats to make them better. So that's what. Is there ever going to stop? And what's the next one, you think? Because it's always sign stealing was one.
It's always something. I wish I knew what the next one was, but it's very interesting the way that baseball's cheating scandals go. They always start with something sort of small and innocuous. And for example, in the sign stealing case, the Red Sox using an Apple Watch to try and relay signs and sign stealing.
That was the Astros. The Astros are
the Yankees. I'll start with the Yankees.
No.
Chris Young.
I'm just saying. That's just I hate to say it, that's just the truth. It starts there. They don't get disciplined, and when there's not discipline for these lesser things, which, by the way, I'm not trying to equate the Red Sox and Astros. They did different things. But when there's not discipline for these lesser things, all of a sudden, teams and players are like, well, okay, if you're not going to crack down on us for that, what's the logical endpoint here? We're going to take this as far as it possibly can go until you say to us that this is a problem. Baseball players love pushing boundaries. They're like my kid. My kid's like, hey, can I have an Oreo for dessert? I'm like, sure, you can have an Oreo. Then he says, can I have 2 Oreos? And I'm like, no, you dick, you can't have 2 Oreos. I said,
Jesus.
1 Oreo.
That's what I'm
Take
talking
it
about.
easy, dude.
Hell yeah.
That's not how you're supposed to. You must be
That's what I'm
from
talking
Boston
about.
or whatever. Gumpy's our baseball gambler here. That first 5 thing he has absolutely been raking on. Go ahead, Gumpy.
Yeah, Jet, how about these hitters start, slapping the ball the other way instead of swinging for the fences? You know what I mean? Why don't we hit for average like the old days?
Yeah. How about you stop sounding like you're 65?
Oh my God! Oh my God! The jet plane just went from the foul line on the Canadian bearded Gumpy. Whoa! Jeez Louise. I don't know where we go.
Answer the question, Jet. I mean, what players just want to hit 220 with 50 home runs? Like,
Yeah, you get paid, dude.
Hey, Gump, I'm super excited that you love singles. Congratulations.
Oh my God! What's going on? He fucking took a. I mean, he did a full.
Doing the
oh my God! Oh my God!